The trick is in what one emphasizes. We either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves happy. The amount of work is the same. Carlos Castaneda. You have everything needed for the extravagant journey that is your life. Carlos Castaneda. A path is only a path, and there is no affront to oneself or to others in dropping it if that is what your heart tells you. Look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. Then ask yourself alone one question: does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Carlos Castaneda. The basic difference between an ordinary man and a warrior is that a warrior takes everything as a challenge while an ordinary man takes everything as a blessing or a curse. Carlos Castaneda. The aim is to balance the terror of being alive with the wonder of being alive. Carlos Castaneda. In a world where death is the hunter, my friend, there is no time for regrets or doubts. There is only time for decisions. Carlos Castaneda. A man of knowledge lives by acting, not by thinking about acting. Carlos Castaneda. We hardly ever realize that we can cut anything out of our lives, anytime, in the blink of an eye. Carlos Castaneda.
Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back, and we'll begin.
Anything is one of a million paths. Therefore you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow it, you must not stay with it under any conditions. To have such clarity you must lead a disciplined life. Only then will you know that any path is only a path and there is no affront to oneself or to others in dropping it if that is what your heart tells you to do. But your decision to keep on the path or to leave it must be free of fear or ambition. I warn you, look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. This question is one that only a very old man asks. Does this path have a heart? All paths are the same. They lead nowhere. They are paths going through the bush, or into the bush. In my own life I could say I have traversed long paths, but I am not anywhere. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Both paths lead nowhere. But one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. Before you embark on any path, ask the question, does this path have a heart? If the answer is no, you will know it, and then you must choose another path. The trouble is nobody asks the question, and when a man finally realizes that he has taken a path without a heart, the path is ready to kill him. At that point very few men can stop to deliberate and leave the path. A path without a heart is never enjoyable. You have to work hard even to take it. On the other hand, a path with heart is easy. It does not make you work at liking it. Carlos Castaneda. For me there is only the traveling on paths that have heart, on any path that may have heart, and the only worthwhile challenge is to traverse its full length, and there I travel looking breathlessly. Carlos Castaneda. For me the world is weird because it is stupendous, awesome, mysterious, unfathomable. My interest has been to convince you that you must assume responsibility for being here, in this marvelous world, in this marvelous desert, in this marvelous time. I want to convince you that you must learn to make every act count, since you are going to be here for only a short while, in fact, too short for witnessing all the marvels of it. Carlos Castaneda. Death is the only wise advisor that we have. Whenever you feel, as you always do, that everything is going wrong and you're about to be annihilated, turn to your death and ask if that is so. Your death will tell you that you're wrong. that nothing really matters outside its touch. Your death will tell you, I haven't touched you yet. Carlos Castaneda. To seek freedom is the only driving force I know. Freedom to fly off into that infinity out there. Freedom to dissolve, to lift off, to be like the flame of a candle, which, in spite of being up against the light of a billion stars, remains intact, because it never pretended to be more than what it is, a mere candle. Carlos Castaneda. Forget the self and you will fear nothing, in whatever level or awareness you find yourself to be. Carlos Castaneda. A man goes to knowledge as he goes to war, wide awake, with fear, with respect, and with absolute assurance. Going to knowledge or going to war in any other manner is a mistake, and whoever makes it might never live to regret it. Carlos Castaneda. Think about it. What weakens us is feeling offended by the deeds and misdeeds of our fellow men. Our self-importance requires that we spend most of our lives offended by someone. Carlos Castaneda. Nobody knows who I am or what I do, not even I. Don Juan. Carlos Castaneda. Only as a warrior can one withstand the path of knowledge. A warrior cannot complain or regret anything. His life is an endless challenge, and challenges cannot possibly be good or bad. Challenges are simply challenges. Carlos Castaneda. You have little time left, and none of it for crap. A fine state. I would say that the best of us always comes out when we are against the wall, when we feel the sword dangling overhead. Personally, I wouldn't have it any other way. Carlos Castaneda. All paths are the same, they lead nowhere. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Both paths lead nowhere, but one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. Carlos Castaneda. The average man is hooked to his fellow men, while the warrior is hooked only to infinity. Carlos Castaneda. You say you need help. Help for what? You have everything needed for the extravagant journey that is your life. Carlos Castaneda. All of us, whether or not we are warriors, have a cubic centimeter of chance that pops out in front of our eyes from time to time. The difference between an average man and a warrior is that the warrior is aware of this, and one of his tasks is to be alert, deliberately waiting, so that when his cubic centimeter pops out he has the necessary speed, the prowess, to pick it up. Carlos Castaneda. Seek and see all the marvels around you. You will get tired of looking at yourself alone, and that fatigue will make you deaf and blind to everything else. Don Juan. Carlos Castaneda. Life in itself is sufficient, self-explanatory and complete. Carlos Castaneda. For an instant I think I saw the loneliness of man as a gigantic wave which had been frozen in front of me, held back by the invisible wall of a metaphor. Carlos Castaneda. We are men and our lot in life is to learn and to be hurled into inconceivable new worlds. Carlos Castaneda. Anything is one of a million paths, therefore you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow, you must not stay with it under any circumstances. Carlos Castaneda. The self-confidence of the warrior is not the self-confidence of the average man. The average man seeks certainty in the eyes of the onlooker and calls that self-confidence. The warrior seeks impeccability in his own eyes and calls that humbleness. The average man is hooked to his fellow men, while the warrior is hooked only to infinity. Carlos Castaneda. I have no routines or personal history. One day I found out that they were no longer necessary for me and, like drinking, I dropped them. One must have the desire to drop them, and then one must proceed harmoniously to chop them off, little by little. If you have no personal history, no explanations are needed, nobody is angry or disillusioned with your acts, and above all no one pins you down with their thoughts. It is best to erase all personal history because that makes us free from the encumbering thoughts of other people. I have, little by little, created a fog around me and my life, and now nobody knows for sure who I am or what I do. Not even I. How can I know who I am, when I am all this? Carlos Castaneda. To worry is to become accessible, unwittingly accessible, and once you worry you cling to anything out of desperation, and once you cling you are bound to get exhausted or to exhaust whoever or whatever you are clinging to. Carlos Castaneda. The internal dialogue is what grounds people in the daily world. The world is such and such or so and so, only because we talk to ourselves about its being such and such and so and so. The passageway into the world of shame opens up after the warrior has learned to shut off his internal dialogue. Carlos Castaneda. The dying sun will glow on you without burning, as it has done today. The wind will be soft and mellow and your hilltop will tremble. As you reach the end of your dance you will look at the sun, for you will never see it again in waking or in dreaming, and then your death will point to the south, to the vastness. Carlos Castaneda. Beware of those who weep with realization, for they have realized nothing. Carlos Castaneda. The most effective way to live is as a warrior. A warrior may worry and think before making any decision. But once he makes it, he goes his way, free from worries or thoughts. There will be a million other decisions still awaiting him. That's the warrior's way. Carlos Castaneda. Self-importance is our greatest enemy. Think about it. What weakens us is feeling offended by the deeds and misdeeds of our fellow man. Our self-importance requires that we spend most of our lives offended by someone. Carlos Castaneda. Malicious acts are performed by people for personal gain. Sorcerers, though, have an ulterior purpose for their acts, which has nothing to do with personal gain. The fact that they enjoy their acts does not count as gain. Rather, it is a condition of their character. The average man acts only if there is a chance for profit. Warriors say they act not for profit but for the spirit. Carlos Castaneda. I had been experiencing brief flashes of disassociation, or shallow states of non-ordinary reality. Carlos Castaneda. The art of being a warrior is to balance the wonder and the terror of being alive. Carlos Castaneda. To ask me to verify my life by giving you my statistics is like using science to validate sorcery. It robs the world of its magic and makes milestones out of us all. Carlos Castaneda. If one is to succeed in anything, the success must come gently, with a great deal of effort but with no stress or obsession. Carlos Castaneda. The hardest thing in the world is for a warrior to let others be. Carlos Castaneda. To be a warrior a man has to be, first of all, and rightfully so, keenly aware of his own death. But to be concerned with death would force any one of us to focus on the self, and that would be debilitating. So the next thing one needs to be a warrior is detachment. The idea of imminent death, instead of becoming an obsession, becomes an indifference. Now you must detach yourself from everything. Only the idea of death makes a man sufficiently detached so he is incapable of abandoning himself to anything. Only the idea of death makes a man sufficiently detached so he can't deny himself anything. A man of that sort, however, does not crave, for he has acquired a silent lust for life and for all things of life. He knows his death is stalking him and won't give him time to cling to anything, so he tries, without craving, all of everything. Carlos Castaneda. A warrior takes his lot, whatever it may be, and accepts it in ultimate humbleness. He accepts in humbleness what he is, not as a grounds for regret but as a living challenge. Carlos Castaneda. My benefactor told me that my father and mother had lived and died just to have me, and that their own parents had done the same for them. He said that warriors were different in that they shift their assemblage points enough to realize the tremendous price that has been paid for their lives. This shift gives them the respect and awe that their parents never felt for life in general, or for being alive in particular. Carlos Castaneda. Nothing can temper the spirit of a warrior as much as the challenge of dealing with impossible people in positions of power. Only under those conditions can warriors acquire the sobriety and serenity to withstand the pressure of the unknowable. Carlos Castaneda. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. I have been beating around the bush all this time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner. This was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. They took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops, human arrows. Therefore, their food is always available to them. No, 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 Carlos replies. This is absurd, Don Juan. What you're saying is something monstrous. It simply can't be true, for sorcerers or for average men, or for anyone. Why not? Don Juan asked calmly. Why not? Because it infuriates you? You haven't heard all the claims yet. I want to appeal to your analytical mind. Think for a moment, and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man the engineer and the stupidity of his systems of beliefs, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. But how can they do this, Don Juan? Carlos asked, somehow angered further by what Don Juan was saying. Do they whisper all that in our ears while we are asleep? No, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic, Don Juan said, smiling. They are infinitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engaged themselves in a stupendous maneuver, stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist, a horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators give us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. I know that even though you have never suffered hunger, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied. Through the mind, which, after all, is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them, and they ensure, in this manner, a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were quite ill at ease with the idea of when the predator made its appearance on Earth. They reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point, with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. And then, everything seems to disappear, and we have now a sedated man. What I'm saying is that what we have against us is not a simple predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, is no longer magical. He's an average piece of meat. There are no more dreams for man but the dreams of an animal who is being raised to become a piece of meat. Trite, conventional, imbecilic. Carlos Castaneda. A man goes to knowledge as he goes to war, wide awake, with fear, with respect, and with absolute assurance. Carlos Castaneda. Once you decide something, put all your petty fears away. Your decision should vanquish them. I will tell you time and time again, the most effective way to live is as a warrior. Worry and think before you make any decision, but once you make it, be on your way free from worries or thoughts. There will be a million other decisions still awaiting you. That's the warrior's way. A warrior thinks of his death when things become unclear. The idea of death is the only thing that tempers our spirit. Carlos Castaneda. That was the way human beings are. They love to be told what to do, but they love even more to fight and not do what they are told, and thus they get entangled in hating the one who told them in the first place. Carlos Castaneda. A warrior must focus his attention on the link between himself and his death. He must let each of his acts be his last battle on earth. Only under those conditions will his acts have their rightful power. Carlos Castaneda. To seek the perfection of the warrior's spirit is the only task worthy of our temporariness, our manhood. Carlos Castaneda. A warrior must cultivate the feeling that he is everything needed for the extravagant journey that is his life. What counts for a warrior is being alive. Life in itself is sufficient, self-explanatory and complete. Therefore, one may say without being presumptuous that the experience of experiences is being alive. Carlos Castaneda. Don't try to hurry, he said. You'll know in due time and then you'll be on your own, by yourself. Do you mean that I won't see you anymore, Don Juan? Not ever again, he said. Genaro and I will be then what we always have been, dust on the road. I had a jolt in the pit of my stomach. What are you saying, Don Juan? I'm saying that we all are unfathomable beings, luminous and boundless. You, Genaro and I are stuck together by a purpose that is not our decision. What purpose are you talking about? Learning the warrior's way. You can't get out of it, but neither can we. As long as our achievement is pending you will find me or Genaro, but once it is accomplished, you will fly freely and no one knows where the force of your life will take you. What is Don Genaro doing in this? That subject is not in your realm yet, he said. Today I have to pound the nail that Genaro put in, the fact that we are luminous beings. We are perceivers. We are an awareness. We are not objects. We have no solidity. We are boundless. The world of objects and solidity is a way of making our passage on earth convenient. It is only a description that was created to help us. We, or rather our reason, forget that the description is only a description and thus we entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle from which we rarely emerge in our lifetime. Carlos Castaneda. There are lots of things a warrior can do at a certain time which he couldn't do years before. Those things themselves did not change. What changed was his idea of himself. Carlos Castaneda. A warrior, or any man for that matter, cannot possibly wish he were somewhere else. A warrior because he lives by challenge, an ordinary man because he doesn't know where his death is going to find him. Carlos Castaneda. He went on to say that conclusions arrived at through reasoning had very little or no influence in altering the course of our lives. Hence, the countless examples of people who have the clearest convictions and yet act diametrically against them time and time again, and have as the only explanation for their behavior the idea that to err is human. Carlos Castaneda. Power rests on the kind of knowledge one holds. What is the sense of knowing things that are useless? Carlos Castaneda. The diagram in the ashes had two epicenters, one he called reason, the other, will. Reason was interconnected directly with a point he called talking. Through talking, reason was indirectly connected to three other points: feeling, dreaming, and seeing. The other epicenter, will, was directly connected to feeling, dreaming, and seeing, but only indirectly to reason and talking. I remarked that the diagram was different from the one I had recorded years before. The outer form is of no importance, he said. These points represent a human being and can be drawn in any way you want. Do they represent the body of a human being? I asked. Don't call it the body, he said. These are 8 points on the fibers of a luminous being. A sorcerer says, as you can see in the diagram, that a human being is, first of all, will, because will is directly connected to 3 points: feeling, dreaming, and seeing. Then next, a human being is reason. This is properly a center that is smaller than will. It is connected only with talking. Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan had always said to me that our great enemy is the fact that we never believe what is happening to us. Carlos Castaneda. You take yourself too seriously, he said slowly. You are too damn important in your own mind. That must be changed. You are so goddamn important that you feel justified to be annoyed with everything. You're so damn important that you can afford to leave if things don't go your way. I suppose you think that shows you have character. That's nonsense. You're weak and conceited, Don Juan. Carlos Castaneda. We don't need anyone to teach us sorcery, because there is really nothing to learn. What we need is a teacher to convince us that there is incalculable power at our fingertips. What a strange paradox. Carlos Castaneda. A warrior considers himself already dead, so there is nothing to lose. The worst has already happened to him, therefore he's clear and calm, judging him by his acts or by his words. One would never suspect that he has witnessed everything. Carlos Castaneda. Man's predicament is that he intuits his hidden resources, but he does not dare use them. This is why warriors say that man's plight is the counterpoint between his stupidity and his ignorance. Man needs now, more than ever, to be taught new ideas that have to do exclusively with his inner world. Shaman's ideas, not social ideas. Ideas pertaining to man facing the unknown, facing his personal death. Now, more than anything else, he needs to be taught the secrets of the assemblage point. Carlos Castaneda. The indulgence of denying is by far the worst. It forces us to believe we are doing great things, when in effect we are only fixed within ourselves. Carlos Castaneda. The average man is either victorious or defeated and, depending on that, he becomes a persecutor or a victim. These two conditions are prevalent as long as one does not see. Seeing dispels the illusion of victory, or defeat, or suffering. Carlos Castaneda. What distinguishes normal people is that we share a metaphorical dagger, the concerns of our self-reflection. With this dagger, we cut ourselves and bleed, and the job of our chains of self-reflection is to give us the feeling that we are bleeding together, that we are sharing something wonderful, our humanity. But if we were to examine it, we would discover that we are bleeding alone, that we are not sharing anything, that all we are doing is toying with our manageable, unreal, man-made reflection. Sorcerers are no longer in the world of daily affairs, because they are no longer prey to their self-reflection. Carlos Castaneda. Nothing is pending in the world, nothing is finished, yet nothing is unresolved, everything is filled to the brim. Carlos Castaneda. For instance, we need to look with our eyes to laugh, he said. because only when we look at things can we catch the funny edge of the world. On the other hand, when our eyes see, everything is so equal that nothing is funny. Carlos Castaneda. In the universe there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force which sorcerers call intent, and absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. Sorcerers, or warriors, were concerned with discussing, understanding, and employing that connecting link. Sorcerers, therefore, divide their instruction into two categories. One is for everyday life state of awareness, the other is for the states of heightened awareness, in which sorcerers obtain knowledge directly from intent, without the distracting intervention of spoken language. Carlos Castaneda. That a warrior, aware of the unfathomable mystery that surrounds him and aware of his duty to try to unravel it, takes his rightful place among mysteries and regards himself as one. Consequently, for a warrior there is no end to the mystery of being, whether being means being a pebble, or an ant, or oneself. That is a warrior's humbleness. One is equal to everything. Carlos Castaneda. It isn't that as time goes by you're learning sorcery, rather, what you're learning is to save energy, and this energy will enable you to handle some of the energy fields that are not employed in perceiving the ordinary world we know. Sorcery is a state of awareness. Carlos Castaneda. The aim of sorcerers is to reach a state of total awareness in order to experience all the possibilities of perception available to man. This state of awareness even implies an alternative way of dying. Carlos Castaneda. Can we perceive those inorganic beings, Don Juan? I asked. We certainly can, he replied. Sorcerers do it at will. Average people do it, but they don't realize that they're doing it because they are not conscious of the existence of a twin world. When they think of a twin world, they enter into all kinds of mental masturbation, but it has never occurred to them that their fantasies have their origin in a subliminal knowledge that all of us have, that we are not alone. Carlos Castaneda. A fine power is always heralded by great pain. Carlos Castaneda. Therefore you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow it, you must not stay with it under any conditions. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Both paths lead nowhere, but one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. Carlos Castaneda. The hardest thing in the world is to assume the mood of a warrior, he said. It is of no use to be sad and complain and feel justified in doing so, believing that someone is always doing something to us. Nobody is doing anything to anybody, much less to a warrior. You are here, with me, because you want to be here. You should have assumed full responsibility by now, so the idea that you are at the mercy of the wind would be inadmissible. Carlos Castaneda. You take yourself too seriously, he said slowly. You are too damn important in your own mind. That must be changed. You are so goddamn important that you feel justified to be annoyed with everything. You're so damn important that you can afford to leave if things don't go your way. I suppose you think that shows you have character. That's nonsense. You're weak and conceited, Don Juan. Carlos Castaneda. I know now that human beings are creatures of awareness, involved in an evolutionary journey of awareness. Beings indeed unknown to themselves, filled to the brim with incredible resources that are never used. Carlos Castaneda. The art of a warrior is to balance the terror of being a man with the wonder of being a man. Carlos Castaneda. Every warrior on the path of knowledge thinks, at one time or another, that he's learning sorcery, but all he's doing is allowing himself to be convinced of the power hidden in his being, and that he can reach it. Carlos Castaneda, El tamaño del narcotráfico en México equivale a la magnitud de la corrupción. Rafael Rodriguez Castaneda, there is no beginning, the beginning is only in your thought. Carlos Castaneda, our will operates in spite of our indulgence. For example, your will is already opening your gap, little by little. What gap are you talking about? There is a gap in us, like the soft spot on the head of a child which closes with age. This gap opens as one develops one's will. Carlos Castaneda, warriors are incapable of feeling compassion because they no longer feel sorry for themselves. Without the driving force of self-pity, compassion is meaningless. Carlos Castaneda, perceiving the world entails a process of apprehending whatever presents itself to us. This particular perceiving is done with our senses and with our will. Carlos Castaneda, upon learning to see, a man becomes everything by becoming nothing. He, so to speak, vanishes and yet he's there. I would say that this is the time when a man can be or can get anything he desires. But he desires nothing, and instead of playing with his fellow men like they were toys, he meets them in the midst of their folly. The only difference between them is that a man who sees controls his folly, while his fellow men can't. A man who sees has no longer an active interest in his fellow men. Seeing has already detached him from absolutely everything he knew before. Carlos Castaneda, discipline makes the glowing coat of awareness unpalatable to the predator. Carlos Castaneda, remember what I've told you, he said. Don't count on emotional realizations. Let your assemblage point move first, then years later have the realization. Carlos Castaneda, I had been reared, perhaps like everyone else, to have a readiness to accept man as an essentially weak and fallible creature. Carlos Castaneda, a hunter knows he will lure game into his traps over and over again, so he doesn't worry. To worry is to become accessible, unwittingly accessible. And once you worry, you cling to anything out of desperation, and once you cling, you are bound to get exhausted or to exhaust whoever or whatever you are clinging to. Carlos Castaneda, only as a warrior can one withstand the path of knowledge. Carlos Castaneda, what makes us unhappy is to want, yet if we would learn to cut our wants to nothing, the smallest thing we'd get would be a true gift. Carlos Castaneda, you must wait patiently, knowing that you're waiting, and knowing what you're waiting for. That is the warrior's way, and if it is a matter of fulfilling your promise, then you must be aware that you are fulfilling it. Then a time will come when your waiting will be over and you will no longer have to honor your promise. Carlos Castaneda, we know that nothing can temper the spirit of a warrior as much as the challenge of dealing with impossible people in positions of power. Only under those conditions can warriors acquire the sobriety and serenity to stand the pressure of the unknowable. Carlos Castaneda, no, he said emphatically, power rests on the kind of knowledge one holds. What is the sense of knowing things that are useless? Carlos Castaneda, nobody is born a warrior in exactly the same way that no one is born an average man. Carlos Castaneda, the great issue with us males is our frailty, he went on. When our awareness begins to grow, it grows like a column, right on the midpoint of our luminous being, from the ground up. That column has to reach a considerable height before we can rely on it. At this time in your life, as a sorcerer, you easily lose your grip on your new awareness. When you do that, you forget everything you have done and seen on the warrior traveler's path because your consciousness shifts back to the awareness of your everyday life. I have explained to you that the task of every male sorcerer is to reclaim everything he has done and seen on the warrior traveler's path while he was on new levels of awareness. The problem of every male sorcerer is that he easily forgets because his awareness loses its new level and falls to the ground at the drop of a hat. Carlos Castaneda. If a warrior is to succeed in anything, the success must come gently, with a great deal of effort but with no stress or obsession. Carlos Castaneda. You feel like a leaf at the mercy of the wind, don't you? He finally said, staring at me. That was exactly the way I felt. He seemed to empathize with me. He said that my mood reminded him of a song and began to sing in a low tone. His singing voice was very pleasing and the lyrics carried me away. I'm so far away from the sky where I was born. Immense nostalgia invades my thoughts. Now that I am so alone and sad like a leaf in the wind, sometimes I want to weep, sometimes I want to laugh with longing. We did not speak for a long while. He finally broke the silence. Since the day you were born, one way or another, someone has been doing something to you, he said. That's correct, I said. And they have been doing something to you against your will. True. And by now you're helpless, like a leaf in the wind. That's correct. That's the way it is. I said that the circumstances of my life had sometimes been devastating. He listened attentively, but I could not figure out whether he was just being agreeable or genuinely concerned until I noticed that he was trying to hide a smile. No matter how much you like to feel sorry for yourself, you have to change that, he said in a soft tone. It doesn't jibe with the life of a warrior. Carlos Castaneda. A man of knowledge has no honor, no dignity, no family, no name, no country, but only life to be lived, and under these circumstances his only tie to his fellow men is his controlled folly, thus.
And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.